So what we will do is we will we'll do the next steps that should be done in order to complete the CACD setup for the project which we considered yesterday. So now, yesterday, we created the repository, and we also saw how we can clone the repository into local machine. So now, what I will do now is, one- okay, so let me open the VS Code. Okay, so now if you see here, I have this repository here, and there is one file in this repository as of now. The purpose of creating the repository is in order to store the application code. Now, when it comes to the format in which the code can be stored for Salesforce projects, the code can be stored in two formats. When it comes to storing the code in a repository, we won't store the code in a random manner. People will store the code in a particular or in a specific format. Like when it comes to those formats, there are two formats in which the application code can be stored. So one is SFDX format, and the other one is non-SFDX format. So non-SFDX format has few disadvantages, and it is an outdated format. But because of that, what people are doing nowadays is in most of the projects, people are storing the code in SFDX format. But it's not all of the projects are following the same format. But there are few projects still in which people are storing it in non-DX format as well. But what we will do is we'll try to see how we can store the code in SFDX format. So what I will do is in order to store the code in SFDX format, so what we should do is we should add the SFDX format structure to this particular repository. So in order to do that, so if you remember, if you want to add a SFDX format structure is nothing but the SFDX project structure. So in order to do that, what I will do is I will if you run the SFDX project create command, what happens is automatically the SFDX folder structure gets created. So now what I will do is I will run the SFDX project create command so that the SFDX project or folder gets created inside this particular repository. Now, so let me run that command. SFDX force colon. So before running this command, so let me tell you a couple of things while working on the terminal. So while working with any command line tool, what happens is you will be running some kind of commands on the terminal. So as of now, whenever working with the terminals, so what happens is the terminal will point to a directory or folder on your system. So as of now, the terminal is my terminal is pointing to this folder whose name is Salesforce projects Vpath 1. So this is nothing but this is a folder on my system, and the terminal is pointing to this particular folder. So now if you want to come one folder out come out of this folder, what you can do is every folder on the system, what happens is it will have a parent folder as well. So except the root folder is nothing but generally this thing, the C directory or C drive will be considered as the root folder. So similarly, there will be some other drives as well. Look, they will be the root folders or the parent folders. Now, so if you want to come move back to the parent folder of a folder, what you can do is you can run a command called as cd space dot dot. So if you run this cd space dot dot, what happens is you will come the terminal gets shifted to the terminal gets pointed to the parent folder of the current folder. So earlier, before running the cd space dot dot, my terminal was pointing to this particular folder. And when I ran this particular command, what happened is terminal is pointing to the folder named saikumar.chintakonda. So it is this folder is the parent folder of this particular folder. So the terminal is pointing to the parent folder of this particular folder as of now. So now, similarly, if you want to you want to, let's in order to show this, let me show you. So if I go to the folders on my system, so as of now, like what I did is, so there is a folder with my name on this particular system, and inside that we have so many folders. Out of that, like there is one folder called as Salesforce project vpath1. So earlier my terminal was pointing to this particular folder, and when I ran cd space dot dot, what happened is like it came out of this folder and it is pointing to the parent folder. So now if I want to make the terminal point again to this particular folder, what I can do is I can run the command cd space the name of the folder to which the terminal should be pointed to. Cd space Salesforce project vpath1. So if I type in this, you can see here the terminal is again pointing to the folder with the name Salesforce project vpath1. So we will see more like more details on these commands when we see the topic of shell. But for now, just remember these points. Like whenever you work with terminal will point to a folder. And if you want to come out of a folder, you can run this cd space dot dot. And if you want to move to a specific folder, you can make use of cd space name of the folder. So just remember these points for now. We will see the other points or other the concept in detail of the commands when we cover the topic of shell. So now the reason why I said you this is like while running few commands, you should run few types of commands inside a specific folder. So that's the reason I said you this. But for now, like remembering these two is sufficient. So now next step is like what I will do is I will run the command to create SFDX project or SFDX folder inside this particular folder, the repository folder. So now let me run the command SFDX space force colon project colon create space. So hyphen hyphen project name. So for project name, what I will do is I will name the project as okay. So actually, like what happens now is like if I let me show you what happens. So I will run it, give it a name as Salesforce project vpath1. Though, so I'm trying to give the same name of the current folder or the repository, same name as the repository. So if I run this command, what happens is like a folder gets created inside this particular folder, inside this particular folder, and it will have all of the contents which a SFDX project or folder contains. So let me click on enter. So and let's see what happens when we run this particular command. Okay. So now what happened is like if you see here, a folder got created inside the repository folder, and so if I open this particular folder, you can see few subfolders as well as files inside this particular folder. So this folder which you are seeing right now, which got opened here, is nothing but the SFDX project or folder. But instead of having a subfolder inside the repository, so what I will do is I will try to add this folder structure directly to the repository folder. So in order to do that, what I can do is I can copy the contents inside this particular folder and I can add them directly to the repository folder. Or instead of doing that, what I will do is let me do it in another way. So I will discard all of the changes, all of the files that got created. So let me go back. Okay. So what I did is I deleted the SFDX project or folder structure. So now what I will do is I will switch back to the parent folder and I will run the same command now. So now as of now, like my terminal is pointing to this folder and I am running the command here. Now what happens is like a folder should like a folder with that name should get created inside this particular folder. So as I created the project, as I give the same name of the repository to this project create command. So what happened is it created all of those files in the existing folder. So in the existing repository folder. So like when this project create command tried to create a folder with this name. So what happened is like it found the folder with this name. So that is nothing but the repository folder, which was already present because of the clone operation which we did. Inside this particular folder, what it did is like it added all of these subfolders and files. Now, so this is nothing but this is the SFDX folder structure. So the reason why we did is in order to store the Salesforce application code, we won't store it in any random manner. There is a specific format or folder structure in which the code will be stored. And in most of the projects, what happens is like people will store the code in SFDX format. So we added SFDX format structure or SFDX folder structure to the repository. So when I ran this command, what happened is earlier in this particular repository, there was only one file, which is nothing but the readme.md file. But as of now, like apart from readme.md file, what happened is there are few other folders as well as files got added to the repository. So to my repository folders, some other folders and files got added. So now we need to move all of these folders and files to the remote repository. As of now, like we are on local repository. Yesterday, as I said, the repository which exists on local machine will be called as local repository, and the repository that exists on the remote server will be called as remote repository. So now my next my requirement is I need to move this folder structure to the remote repository. So now in order to move the folder structure to the repository, remote repository, so how you can do that is, so as of now, what is happening is your changes or you have made changes onto a folder on your system. So there is a folder named as Salesforce project vpath one. So inside this particular folder, you have added few files as well as folders. Now, in order to move these changes to the remote repository, how you can do that is while working with Git. So if you want to move changes to remote repository, how you can do that is, so first the changes happens on a folder or directory on your system, and from that folder or directory, what you should do is you should move the changes to two other folders. I will show you what are those two other folders, and from there you will move the changes to the remote repository. So in order to understand how the changes can be moved to remote repository on a on Git, so let me show you one diagram. So, okay, so let's consider this image. So if you see here, there are few things getting displayed here. So while working with Git, so what happens is if you want to move changes from local repository to remote repository, so you should follow few steps. So generally, what happens is initially the changes will be present in working directory. So whenever if you want to get the application code to working directory, so we can directly add the code manually to the working directory, by manually creating the files and adding the code to those files, or you can make use of some kind of build tools in order to get the application code from a server to the working directory. So generally what happens is your changes will happen first happen on working directory. So working directory is nothing but it is the directory where you will add your application code. It is a directory on your machine, so which contains the application code. So first the changes happens on working directory. So from working directory, if you want to move the changes to the remote repository, so first you need to move the changes from working directory to staging area. And so from staging area, you should move the changes to local repository. So from working directory, first you will move the changes to staging area, and from staging the changes will be moved to local repository area, and from local repository area you will move the changes to remote repository area. So the next question is like how we can move the changes from working directory to staging area. So in order to move that, there is a git command which you will make use of. Git add is the command which we will make use of in order to move the changes from working directory to staging area. And if you want to move the changes from staging area to local repo area, so git commit is the command that needs to be ran. And if you want to move the changes from local repo to remote repo, git push is the command that needs to be executed. So now the next question is like what are these staging area and local repository areas? So like these are invisible directories that are created by Git. So like Git will make use of these invisible directories in order to move changes from working directory to remote repository. So it won't be possible to view these areas, but Git will show you a message whenever we run this command. It will show you a message saying that like the changes got moved to staging area, and it will show you a different message when the changes gets moved to local repository area. So the reason why we have these areas will come into picture whenever you work with local repository or any folder which has Git properties. So local repository is nothing but it is a folder which has the properties of Git. So now let's try to run these commands and push the changes that happen in my working directory to remote repository. So let me go to VS Code. So now as of now, if you see here, that my changes, the changes are there in working directory. So in order to move the changes from working directory to staging area, so what I will do is I'll run a git command which is called as git space add space. So if you want to move in first thing is before running this particular command, my terminal should point to the repository folder. So if I try running this particular command here, what happens is like it will throw me a message saying that not a Git repository. So let me run this command and show you what happens. So if you see here, so when I ran this command here, so as of now, like my terminal is pointing to saikumar.sinthakunda, and it is not a it is one folder on my machine, and it is not a repository folder, or it is not a folder that contains the properties of repository. So if you see here, what is happening is like it is throwing me a message saying that not a Git repository. So the meaning of that is this Git commands, this specific Git add command should be run inside a Git repository, or it should be run in a folder which has the properties of a Git repository. So now, so in order to move to that particular folder, to the repository folder, I will run this command cd space the name of the repository. Okay, so now my terminal is pointing to the repository folder, and here what I will do is I will run git add command. So while running this git add command, so if you want to move all of the changes that happen in working directory to staging area, you can do that by this dot symbol. So dot indicates all of the changes that happened in the current directory. So if you want to move all of the changes happen in the current directory to the staging area, you can run git command which is called as git space add space dot. Dot indicates all of the changes. But if you want to move only a specific file or any specific change to the staging area, so how you can do that is you can copy the uh, folder path of the file or folder. You can copy that specific folder's path, and you can specify the path here. So let me show you one example. Now let's consider I want to only move the changes on this particular only this particular file to the staging area. So what I will do is, how I can do that is I can copy the path of let me so I'm copying the path of this particular file. and after copying the path, so I'll come here and I'll space the path here. So okay, so let me try running with this path and let's see what happens. So if you see here, so the package.json file got moved from changes section to staged changes section. So that means the file got moved from working directory to staging area. So now instead of doing this for each and every file, so what I can do is I will run git add command git space add space dot, so that all of the changes gets moved from the working directory to staging area. So if you see here earlier, all of the changes or files were present inside this below this changes section, and now they got moved to staged changes section. So now the next step is our changes as of now, my changes got moved from working directory area to staging area. And so now, so in order to move the changes from staging area to local repository area, we should run one more git command called as git space uh, git space commit space. Okay, so git commit is the command that should be run in order to move the changes from staging to local repo area. So now for this command, so in order to run this command, so what we should do is this commit command will support a parameter called as -m. So for every commit or every commit whichever you make on the repository, you should also provide a message for the commit as well. So this message is a required field or required property while doing the commits. So without providing a message, you can't do any. Without providing any message, you can't provide you can do any commits. So now for this, what I will do is I will name this commit as added SFDX folder structure, and I'm clicking on enter. Okay. So now what happened is the changes got moved from this local repo area to, sorry, staging area to local repo. So that's what happened when I ran this particular command. So now in order to move the changes from local repo to remote repository, so what I can do is I can run a git command called as git push. So let me run git push command. Okay. So when I ran git push command, what happened is the changes got moved from local repo to remote repository. So here, in order to check whether the push happened successfully or not, what I will do is I will open the repository, the remote repository. So if you see here, earlier yesterday when we created the repository here, it had only the readme.md file. Now, if you see here, these many files got added to the repository or the main branch inside the repository. So you can see the message for the commit as added SFDX folder structure. So which is the message which I give while doing that particular commit. So this is how you can bring the changes from the working directory to the remote Git repository. So the reason why we have done this is as of now, till now, what we have done is we added a folder structure to the repository. So the reason for adding the folder structure is, so the purpose of repository is to store the application code, and the code won't be stored in any random manner. So it will be stored in a specific format, and the format that will be used on Salesforce projects is either SFDX format or non-SFDX format. And we are trying to store the code in SFDX format for this specific project. So we have added the SFDX folder structure to the repository. So after adding the SFDX folder structure, the next step is now I should retrieve the code from production org, and I should push that particular code to the main branch in the repository. So generally, what happens is for each of the org whichever we have in our project, we will create a separate branch in the repository, and those branches will store the respective orgs code. So generally, main or master branch, what happens is main or master branch will store the code of production org. And similarly, what after doing that, what I will do is I will also create like a branch and name it as UAT, and I will also create a branch for QA org as well. So I will create two more other branches. So one for storing the UAT org code, and the other for storing the QA org code. So I will simply name them as QA and UAT. So now let's see how we can retrieve the code and push that particular code to the main or master branch. So I'm trying to push the production org code to main or master branch. So let's see how we can do that. So before doing that, so before retrieving the code from production org, so the next step is let me clear this. Okay, so the next step is, so before retrieving the code from production org, so the next thing which you should remember is, like before storing the code in the repository, you should decide on what are all the components that needs to be stored in the repository. So like how you will come to a conclusion on this is like you will get in touch with the lead developer of the development team, and you will ask him like what are all the components that they are going to modify as part of that particular project. So the reason for this is like we are considering the case of setting up the CI/CD process for a fresh project. So for a fresh project, so what happens is like as this is a fresh project, so you will get in touch with the lead developer and you will check with him on the components that needs to be uh, tracked in the repository, or like what you can ask them is like him is like the components whichever they are going to modify as part of that particular project. So what happens with that discussion you have with the lead developer is like he will tell you the list of components which they are going to modify as part of that particular project. Like he will either provide you the exact list, or sometimes what happens is like they might tell you even they too are not sure about all the kind of components which they are going to modify as part of that particular project. But for now, let's consider that we got a list from the lead developer saying that these are the components which they are going to modify as part of that particular project. So we will see that first, and later I will also show you like how we can what are all the components which we can retrieve in the case of like even the lead developer is not sure on the kind of components that needs to be tracked or stored in the repository. So now before doing that, so I should also have package.xml file here in this particular folder structure. So let me add the package.xml as well. So in order to do that, so I will add it manually. So first I will create a folder called as manifest, and in manifest I will create this package.xml file. Okay. So now, in order to prepare this package.xml, so it will depend on the discussion which we have with the lead developer. So for now, what I will do is I will assume that they are going to modify few components, and I will pick those components. So let me log into the production org, which I have already. So I will also log into the workbench of this productions org. Okay, so let me set the password. Okay, so let me log into workbench. Okay, so I need that extension as well. So here in incognito, it is not displaying the extension. So let me switch to the normal window. So I log in to the same production of here. Okay, so the extension is not getting displayed in incognito. Okay, so let me make use of this. So now let's assume that so while you have the discussion with the lead developer, he said that so they are going to modify like a few objects. Like he said that they are going to modify account object. So let's assume that. So let me switch to custom object. Okay, so when you have the call with the lead developer on the components that needs to be tracked in the repository, so generally like what happens is like the purpose of storing the code in repositories, like one is like it will we can store like a purpose of having the repository is like one thing is like we can store the application code, and the next thing is like it will allow us to track the changes on the components or on the track the changes on the code as well. So like now so let me uh, consider a case of like the developer has lead developer has said me that they are going to modify account object. So similarly, so he also said me that they are going to modify case object, and they are going to modify contact object. So I'm assuming that like they are going to few objects. So account, case, contact. So I'll add the standard Salesforce objects. So let me assume that he also said me that they are going to modify lead opportunity order. And okay, so let's assume that he said me that they are going to modify these objects, and apart from this, so they are going to modify all of the Apex classes that are available in the production org. So as of now, like I think there won't be any Apex classes. Okay, so all of these are the standard classes which comes whenever you create a Salesforce org. And apart from that, the last three are the classes which which I added. I think these two are the classes which I added the earlier classes. Okay, so now what I will do is let's assume that the developer said me that he wants to track all of the Apex classes. So what I am doing here is like I am like including all of the Apex classes that are present, and similarly, like he also said me that they are going to modify all of the lightning components as well. So let me, okay, so there is only one lightning component, and let me add this. And so he also said me, uh, like when it comes to lightning, there will be two types, Aura and LWC. Okay, so we don't have any other components with that type. Okay, so apart from this, so let's assume that the developer also said me that, so they are going to modify system administrator profile. And so like I will include system admin profile as well in the package.xml. So that's it. So let's assume that the developer has said that we are required to track the changes on only these components. So if that is the case, what you will do is you will copy this particular package.xml, and you will paste the package.xml here. So in the repository folder, whichever you have, in the package.xml file that you have in the repository. So you will paste the paste the package.xml code there, and you will run the retrieve command. So that is the normal process which we did in the earlier sessions. So this is one case. So this is one case of how we can prepare the package.xml for a fresh project. So what we assumed is like we got in touch with the lead developer, and we checked with him on the components that they are going to modify as part of that particular project. So the other case is like sometimes what happens is like instead of checking with the lead developer, so sometimes what happens is like people will track all of the most of the not all of the components, most of the components that exist inside the production org. So if you want to do that, so like if you want to track most of the components that exist inside a production, or what you can do is you can make use of one extension available in VS Code. So like there is a extension available for VS Code. So the name of the extension is package.xml generator. So there is an extension called as package.xml generator. So in order to like while working with VS Code, if you want to add any extensions, like you can click on this extensions symbol here, and from here you can add the extensions. So one extension which you can add is like while working with Salesforce CLI, there will be something called as extension pack, CLI extension pack, Salesforce extension pack. So like it will contains like a few things. So what you can do is like while working with CLI using VS Code, so you can add this extension pack into your VS Code. So I'll tell you the purpose of this particular extension pack later, but you can try adding this. So apart from this, you can also add, there will be something called as, uh, okay. So now I think it also contains the CLI extension pack as well. So that's the reason no need of adding the CLI extension separately. You can add this Salesforce extension pack, and I will tell you the purpose of this extension pack later. So after this, so now I am trying to show you the package.xml generator extension. So if I type in package here, so there will be an extension called as package.xml generator. So let me type in generator. So the name of the extension is Salesforce package.xml generator. So let me type in, so the results are not filtering. Okay. So if you type in Salesforce package, you can see an extension with the name Salesforce package.xml generator. So I'm not sure why it is not displaying if I simply type in package. Okay. So there are a lot of results with the package name. That's why it will be like somewhat hard to pick that this specific extension. So what you can do is you can try typing in Salesforce package, and so when you do this, like you will see an extension with the name Salesforce package.xml generator. So you can add this particular extension to the VS Code. So now after adding this, adding is nothing but you'll select it from the list of results that get displayed here. Like you'll select the Salesforce package.xml generator and you'll simply click on install. So as of now, I have already installed this extension. So that's the reason install option is not getting displayed. So now, so this extension is already added to my VS Code. So after you have this extension, what you can do is you can make use of this extension in order to generate the package.xml. Uh, if your case is like you want to track most of the components that exist uh, inside the production org. So let me show you how you can make use of this particular extension. So if you want to work with this particular extension, so what you can do is after adding the extension, so you can type in uh, Control Shift P. So you can type in Control Shift P. So when you type in command Control Shift P keys together, you should press these three keys together on your keyboard. So when you press Control Shift P, what happens? It will display you this search box, and here, so like in this particular search box, if you see here, like as of now, this package.xml generator is getting displayed as the first result. So I click on this. So when I clicked on that, what happened is the extension got opened here. Now you can make use of this particular extension in order to build the package.xml generator. So before using this particular extension, so what you should do is you should connect a default or to the Visual Studio Code. So on the left hand side of the on the left bottom of the VS Code, you can see something called as no default or set as of now. As of now, like there is no default org set. So what I will do is I will uh, add a default org. So for that, what I will do is 1 minute. Let me connect charger. Okay. So I am trying to show you how we can set the default org here in VS Code. So ideally, like it should have, as of now, like in my VS Code, there are few orgs which were connected already. So if I type in SFDX space force colon or colon list, so it will display the list of orgs that are connected with the CLI on my machine. So as of now, like there are few orgs which are already connected with the CLI on my machine. So let this get completed. So if you see here, there are these many ORs that were already connected on the like with the CLI on my system. So out of this, now I want to get connected with this particular org whose alias name is vpath prod. So now it should ideally here when you click on this no default org set, it should ideally display all of the orgs that are connected. Let me, okay, so for some reason it is not displaying the earlier connected orgs. So what I will do is I will click on this authorize an org option, and when I clicked on that, it is asking me to select the type of the org, and I will select production as the type. For the alias name, let me provide the same name. So I'll provide the name as vpath prod. Okay, so let me click on login. Okay, so the authentication is successful. Now let me go to VS Code. So if you see here in the bottom of the screen, as of now, the VS Code got connected to vpath prod, which is nothing but the my production org. So the first thing is like before using this particular package.xml generator, you should set a default org. So in order to do that, you can follow the same steps. Or like there is a command as well. So like while running a command, this out web login command, which is nothing but the command which we will use in order to establish connection between a Salesforce org and the CLI on our machine. So in that command, there will be an option or parameter supported by that particular command. So like if you make use of that particular command parameter, so even that will set the default org as well. So you can look at the option in the command line reference documentation. So, but for now, let me go with this way. So as of now, like the default org is set. So after the default org is set, so what you should do next is, uh, when you open, So the next thing is like you should make use of this package.xml generator in order to get all of the components that are present inside that particular production org. So now, so let me one second. Let me close this package.xml generator and let me open the package.xml generator again. So if you see here, what is happening is ideally I should have connected to a default org, and after that I should have uh, open this particular generator. So now what happened is like when I open this particular package.xml generator, so it sent a request to the org. So it sent a request to this particular org, and it retrieved all of the types of components that are available in that particular org. So here in this particular metadata types box, what it is doing is like it is displaying all of the components that are available inside the production org. So now, so what you can do is like if your requirement is if you want to track all of the components that are existing inside the production org, so what you can do is you can simply click on select all. So with this, what happens is this particular extension will automatically generate a package.xml, and it will provide you that package.xml file. So instead of selecting each and every component type and all of the components under that particular component type from workbench, so you can make use of this extension so that you can prepare the package.xml in a shorter time. So now when I clicked on select all, what is happening is like in the backend, this particular extension is preparing the package.xml file. So let this get completed. I think it will take some 3 to 5 minutes. Let this get completed. So after that, I will show you the next steps.
Is this a production backup?
Sorry, come again.
Is this a production backup before going to move to new changes?
No, it is not a backup. So like what we are doing is like the purpose of repository is in order to store the application code. And like in repository, we will store the code in branches. So based on the number of orgs whichever we have in our project, so we will create those many number of branches, and each org's code will be stored in a separate branch. So what we are trying to do now is like we are trying to get the production or code, and in order to get the code, I'm preparing the package.xml. So it can also be considered as a backup as well, because repository acts as a storage location. It can be considered.
Got it. Once you have this, if you're moving new code, it will be again, you'll have the back one and the new one will be again, you need to take the backup every time, right? So that
No,
you
no,
have
no.
versions.
Not required to take the backup every time. So we are going to retrieve the code now, right? So what happens is like all of the modifications whichever happens on top of this, if we add them to the repository, so we will have those versions in the repository.
Okay, got it.
Like if you see,
another way, like we don't have any CI/CD or any version control system. First time when you, because a source of truth is like your Salesforce org, right, Usha? So
Right.
that time, yeah. So from source of truth, Salesforce org to Git repository or Bitbucket, whatever it is, this is the process. First time. So pull everything from the org and you are going to push it to Bitbucket or Git, whatever it is. It's a creating the master branch.
Okay, got it.
yeah. So let me go back here.
In the default folder already package.xml will be there. VS Code.
Repeat your question. I didn't get.
No, already package.xml will be there in the default folder in VS Code editor.
Hmm. So when you run this project create command, so there is an option that will be supported by project create command. So if you pass in hyphen hyphen manifest, or if you pass in the manifest option, what happens is like the project or folder gets created with package.xml file. So when I ran this project create command today, so I forgot to specify that manifest parameter. So what happened is like a SFDX project got created without the package.xml file. So it won't come by default. Like if you specify that particular option which creates the package.xml, then only the package.xml gets created in the SFDX project or folder. So by default, it won't come. So while running the create project create command, so if you pass in hyphen hyphen manifest option, what happens is like a SFDX project gets created along with the package.xml file. So the package.xml file will be present inside the manifest folder. So if you pass in this particular parameter or option, but if you don't pass in this particular parameter or option, uh, like uh, uh, the SFDX project or folder gets created, but it won't contain this package.xml file. So ideally, we should have the package.xml file as well. So while running this particular command, I forgot to provide that particular option. So I created the package.xml manually again. So is that your question or different one?
Yeah, same one.
Okay. Okay, so how many of you have some kind of knowledge on Salesforce platform? If anyone doesn't have any prior knowledge on Salesforce, you can, like, if you are unable to speak, you can type in the chat saying that no Salesforce experience.
Tiger, I'm very good in Salesforce,
Oh,
excluding CICD.
acha, acha, okay,
Zero
okay,
knowledge.
okay, okay. Okay, so I assume even all of the others have some kind of knowledge. Okay, fine. Okay, so this operation got completed. So here you can see a message saying that all metadata selected except a few things. Okay, so now what I will do is I will click on copy to clipboard. So what happened is like the package.xml, whichever was generated by this particular extension, was copied. So now after copying, so I'll go here and I'll paste the package.xml. So here, if you see here, this is the package that was generated by the extension. So it contains all of the components that are present inside the production org. So now, out of all of these components, so even tracking all of the components is not a wise decision. So because what happens is uh, when it comes, one reason for this is it won't be possible to uh, deploy certain types of components. What happens is there will be certain types of issues which we will get while deploying certain types of components. I will show you that. So but for now, so what happens generally we will exclude certain types of components while doing this particular step. So let me show you the components which we are going to exclude. So I'll show you the reason why we will exclude certain types of components from tracking. So here, as of now, I have this particular package.xml. So I simply copied the package.xml that was generated by the extension and I pasted here. So before showing you the components that needs to be excluded, so let me retrieve the components from production or using this particular package.xml. So for that, what I will do is I will run the retrieve command force colon, and I want to retrieve it from an org whose alias name is vpath broad. Okay. Okay. So as we have a lot of components in the package.xml, even this operation will take some 3 to 5 minutes. Let's wait for this to complete it. Okay. So it got completed. Now, if you see here, some 3000 plus files got added to the repository. So after retrieving the components, the next step is after retrieving the components, the next step is you should validate all of these components against the same production org. So in order to do that, so I'll run the validate command. So the reason for doing this is in projects where you follow this kind of DevOps process, what happens is the deployments won't happen directly from an org to org. So the deployment to a org happens from a branch inside the repository. So first the changes will be pushed to main or master branch, and the deployments to production org will happen from the main or master branch. Similarly, even the deployments to other orgs happen from the branch only. So in order to make sure that there are no validation errors, so we should make sure that we should validate all of the components that are stored in the repository and make sure that there are no validation errors. So in order to do that, let me run this validation command. So I will source colon deploy colon hyphen c. So now I am validating against the same org from where I have retrieved all of these components. So let's see what happens. So I have included this hyphen C parameter or option in the command. So when you include hyphen C is a shortcut for check only parameter or option. So when you include this hyphen C parameter or option or check only option, what happens is a deployment doesn't happen. Only the validation of the components in the package happens. Now, with this, what this command is doing is it is validating all of the components in the package.xml against this particular org. So let me go to this org and let's monitor the status of the validation from here. So I will open deployment status. let this get completed. Okay, so there are 376 errors. So let's take a look at the errors which we got. So now out of these errors, so like it will be possible to resolve a few types of errors, and when it comes to few types of errors, I think it won't be possible to resolve them. So like for the errors which are we can't resolve, so what we can do is like we can simply exclude those components from the package.xml, and the errors whichever we can resolve, so we can try resolving. So as of now, like if you see here, like most of the errors are on, I think most of the errors are on profiles. Okay, so out of the 376 errors, majority of them are on profiles. Okay, so let's first try to resolve the errors on profile so that this count will come to a lesser number. So now, okay, so I think almost some 300 plus errors are on profiles. So if you see these errors, so if you see the error on profiles, you can see a message saying that you can't edit tab settings for web store as it is not a valid tab. So this particular profile is referring to a tab whose name is web store, and Salesforce is throwing an error saying that it is not a valid tab. So the meaning of that is this tab might not be present in this particular or at this point of time. So that might be the reason for that. So it is a standard tab. So web store is a standard tab, and the reason we are getting this message is either we don't have the permission to modify the permissions of either this particular profile doesn't have the permission to modify the tab settings of this particular tab, or the tab might not be present in the inside this particular org. So this particular org was I have not done any modifications on this particular org. So this is the org which was provided by Salesforce. Like when I created the developer edition account, so I got this org. So this is the meaning of that error. So like in order to resolve this error, like there are two ways. You can remove the reference of this particular tab from the profile file, or what you can do is you can simply exclude this profile as well. So when you exclude this profile, what happens is like uh, the profile will no longer present in the list of components that are being tracked, and even it won't be present here in the package.xml as well, or in the package that gets validated, and that error gets resolved. So let me show you the first way. So if you want to resolve that particular error, what you can do is, so I think we can see the same error on majority of the components. Okay, so let me show you how we can resolve that particular error using the first way. So one way is you can web store. Okay. Okay, so this is the permission related to the tab setting of that particular tab. So now one way is we can remove that particular tab permission from the profile file, and so you can manually modify the profile file in order to remove the tab permission, or other way is like you can directly exclude this particular profile from the package.xml. So generally in most of the real-time projects, what happens is out of all the standard profiles that exist in a Salesforce org, people will mostly make use of administrator profile only. So apart from system administrator profile, people won't use most of the other standard profiles in most of the real-time projects. So there might be an exception on in some of the projects, but in most of the real-time projects, what happens is like people will only make use of system administrator profile, and they will create some other custom profiles. But mostly they won't use the other standard profiles which comes by default. So now in order to remove these errors, what I will do is I will exclude all of the other profiles that are present inside the my metadata directory. So what I will do is I will so in order to do it quickly, so what I can do is let me So I will keep only admin profile and I will remove all of the other profile files. So in order to do it quickly, what I will do is I will delete this particular folder, and so let me add back the profile folder cell again in order to include only the admin profile. So let me, so earlier we have profiles folder inside this default folder in Forza folder. So I recreated the profile folder, and here, so I will create a new file and I will name it as admin method.xml, I think. So I'm pasting the code of the profile file which I copied. So what I did is I deleted all of the other profiles and I kept in only the admin profile. So with this, what happens is, the reason why I did this is, like in most of the real-time projects, people will not use the like all of the other standard profiles which I deleted except the system administrator profile. So as people won't make use of those standard profiles which comes by default, it is like there is no purpose of tracking the changes on that. So like people will mostly use the system administrator profile, and apart from this, like they will make use of custom profiles. So that's the reason I removed all of those profiles. And now when I validate this time, so as we don't have all of those profiles, so like most of those errors should disappear, and like we should only see few errors now. So let me initiate the validation again. So before that, so I think let me check something. So let it be in progress. So before that, okay. So I'm just trying to check one thing. So okay. So what I was actually checking is, I think I named this file in incorrect format. So I'm trying to check the actual name, but let me correct it. So I think it's name of the profile dot profile hyphen meta dot xml. So let me try with this name. So this particular validation step will take some time because in the process of validation, we will get a few types of errors, and resolving these errors will take some time. So once this step gets completed, what happens is, like we can create the rest of other branches, and we can see the process which people will follow in order to migrate changes from the development environments to the higher ops. So let's wait for this validation to complete. Okay, so now the error count got reduced to 31. So let's see the errors now. So, okay, so we have a few errors on like settings type of component. So it is saying that required fields are missing. Okay, so before settings, so what are the other types of errors which we have? So we have some few errors on layouts, and we have a few errors on list views. So the errors on list views are, so like what you can do is, like if you see here the errors on list view, so one says value too long for field, the field value for field named name is too long. So that means the name of this particular list view exceeded the maximum length that is supported by the name field. So that is this error. So like if you reduce the number of characters to less than 40, so what happens, like this error will go up, this error will vanish. And if you look at the other errors, So as you are saying that most of you have knowledge on Salesforce, you will you might definitely know the purpose of list view. So if you remember what a list view will have is list view is nothing but it will display the uh, data stored in an object in a tabular format. So like whenever you create a list view, you will give the list view a name, as well as it will be possible to share the list view with a specific group of people, or only the person who created the list view can he will have that option to uh, like uh, like a set whether only he can see that particular list view, or the list view should be available to other users as well. So like there will be that kind of option available on list view. Apart from that, so list view will display the records or data stored in an object in a tabular format. Table is nothing but it will contain columns. So this particular columns in list view is nothing but each column will indicate a specific field's data. So now, so what is happening is we got one error on the name of the list view, and the other error is on the scope of the list view. Scope is nothing but uh, the visibility permission. So there is this particular list view was created by this is a standard list view, and the scope on this particular list view is set to mine. So mine in the sense only that particular user can see that particular list view, and no other users can see that particular list view. So apart from that, so it says bad value for restricted pick list, and the other error says could not resolve list view column work type name. Okay. So in order to resolve these three errors, what you can do is you can simply remove this particular column from the list view. So with that, what happens is this error gets vanished. And in order to resolve this bad value for restricted peg list, what we can do is we can check the possible values or the values that are accepted by the this particular pick list field, and we can try modifying that particular pick list field's value. And for the rest of the other two, so we should see what is the possible value that is accepted by this particular parameter. So now let me go to this list views. So what I will do is first I will open this list view on service appointment object. So there is an object called as service appointment. So in order to resolve this, so one more thing is, so in the real-time production orgs, you won't see these many different types of projects. So as of now, what we are doing is we are making use of a developer edition account. So it contains a lot of objects. When it comes to Salesforce, Salesforce will have different clouds like Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, Marketing Cloud. There are a lot of different clouds. So this particular service appointment object will be available only in a few. Sorry. So I was saying that I lost power and my network got disconnected. Okay. So we'll continue tomorrow. I have already posted a message in the group saying that we can connect tomorrow. So out of the people who we have here, if you have any questions, you can ask me. Otherwise, you can drop off. Okay. So Bharat, have you joined through Pradeep, or you joined through a different person? Okay, so if you have no questions, we will meet in tomorrow's session, and we will continue the discussion on the same thing.